for our death. People sometimes wonder, as they think about death, whether they're going to be buried or cremated. Now, I want to be careful here because I'm not saying there's a biblical verse that I can point to that commands burial. Nor am I saying that anybody who has not been buried or maybe been cremated or wants to be cremated is automatically just spiritually in the wrong. Or if you cremated a loved one in the past, that you were in the wrong and you should feel bad about that. The reality is, particularly we talked about persecution, as we talk about persecution tonight, many who have died for the gospel were not buried, burned at the stake, bodies never found. So there's no way we're going to be legalistic here. But when you consider the biblical teaching on resurrection, I think you would have to conclude that the picture of burial is biblical. In other words, the burial of the body points to the hope of resurrection of the body. When we place somebody's body in a tomb or in the ground, just as Jesus' body was put in a tomb, we're saying that we believe one day that body's going to rise again, just as Jesus rose again. This picture of burial and resurrection points to the gospel in Romans 6. All throughout the Old Testament, pointed to in places like Hebrews 11, we see significance tied to the burial of someone. So the point I want to make here is the picture of burial is biblical, and at the same time, the picture of cremation in many ways undercuts resurrection. Now again, even as I say that, I want to be careful. I'm not saying that if somebody's been cremated, they won't receive a resurrected body. Obviously, biblically, that is not true. How someone is buried or cremated is definitively not a determinant of their eternity. Faith in Christ alone determines that. What we're talking about here, though, is the picture of burial that points to the gospel and the resurrection of Jesus in a way that's not pictured in cremation. And I think this is worth noting. Russell Moore, I think, puts it best. He said, since we believe in the resurrection of the body, we do not see a corpse as garbage. From the time of our earliest ancestors in the faith, we have buried our dead, committing them to the earth from which they came with the conviction that they will one day be summoned from it once more. The image of sleep is useful, not because the dead are unconscious, but because they will one day be awakened. God deems as faith Joseph committing his bones to his brothers for future transport in the land of promise. In the same way, the act of burial is a testimony of the entire community to the resurrection of the body. Cremation is a horrifying testimony of the burning up of the flesh and bones, a testimony that is decidedly pagan in both origin and in practice. Of course, God can resurrect a cremated Christian or a Christian torn to pieces by lions. But how we deal with the body of a Christian teaches us, and the watching world, what we really believe about the gospel. Creation ought then to be shunned by those who hope in Christ. And I agree, because we'll follow this. Christians look forward to the restoration of the body, not relief from the body. Our ultimate hope is not that we're going to be ultimately delivered from our bodies. No, our ultimate hope is that we're ultimately going to have risen, resurrected, restored bodies in the presence of God.